I have one last agent I'd like to demonstrate, and that is a very basic host agent that will exhibit greeter-like behavior, greeting users as they join the world. I've already added an NPC into the world and attached this script to it. This is a script called greeter. I've got two users in the world right now, my primary one called Grant and a secondary Grant user that's logged in from a second computer. I have the two cases here because I wanted to have side-by-side videos showing these things synchronized to some degree. So when this agent starts, it's going to have a goal of monitor. It's going to have, there's a plan. It's going to have the NPC bow. It's going to set up some listeners on proximity, which senses when user avatars are close to the NPC avatar. It's going to set up a listener on presence, which is listening for events of users entering and exiting the world. And it's going to set up the listener on the text chat so it can monitor any messages that are sent there. It's going to send a message to the text chat saying that it's monitoring the room, and then it's going to cheer. Now with the presence listener, there's actually a plan for presence beliefs when they're added to the agent's belief base, and that is down here. And basically what's going to happen is it's going to send a message to the text chat indicating that it's sensed that the user is there. It's going to move to the user, bow to the user, and then send a message to the user saying what room would you like to go to, the physics classroom or the English classroom. There are 3 users in the world right now, so it's actually going to get 3 new beliefs, and it's going to run this plan for all 3 of those beliefs in turn. So why don't we just start off with that. So that indicates it set up the listeners, and now it's handling the plan events. I should say now it's handling the presence belief plans as they are added into its belief base. So it's gone to Grant, now it's gone to Grant 2, and then it went to Jade controller, and it was far enough away that it didn't actually move, it just turned. So anybody at this point could actually enter a message asking to be led, but I will do it from here. When I enter that message, there's going to be a plan for the message beliefs as they're added to the belief base of the agent. And what it's going to do is try and parse out, with really rudimentary text parsing, which room that you want to be led to. And then it's going to go to the user that made the request. And then once it arrives at the user, it's going to put a necessary message to the text chat saying that it's arrived at the user, and then it's going to set up a new goal of going to the goal of what room the user requested to be led to. And that will take us through this plan where it bows, says to the user, please follow me to set to the room, and then it's going to go to the room. And then it sets up a belief that it's going to the goal. And when it reaches the final goal, it's going to again put another unnecessary message to the text chat saying it's arrived there. Most of these messages are just there for testing purposes. They're not anything you'd have in a real system, obviously. It's going to send the message saying it arrived at the goal, and then it's going to get the cell location of the user just to see if it's followed it all the way to the goal. And then there's actually a handler for cell location beliefs when they're added in response to that request. And it's going to pull out a distance to the cell, the distance being the distance from the user avatar to the goal. And if that distance is greater than 8 virtual feet, it's going to decide that it hasn't really completed the goal of leading the user to the classroom in question. So it's going to go back to the user and go through a loop of doing that until the user actually gets all the way to the classroom that it asked to be led to. So why don't we start this off by saying let's go to the physics classroom. and off he goes. Now if I stop midway, when he gets there, he has asked for my location, and it turns out that I'm 22 virtual feet away from that classroom. So it returns to me, goes through the same thing. It says, please follow me to the physics classroom, and it could just keep doing this ad nauseum, which isn't really a brilliant behavior for building a credible NPC, but this is just a very, very simple script. So I could continue to follow him. Oops. Now, if I ask to be led to the English classroom, there's a bit of a problem here in that the avatar, at least typically, just walks straight through the wall, which, I cannot. There's no way I can follow him through a wall to the English classroom. So this is a bit of a failing in how this works. And the NPC even has collision detection on, so it should avoid collisions. And even though that's on, it walks through walls. And then here you can see an issue in that the NPC already had a goal of going to the user, but the user moved, so it's gone a little bit past where I currently am to where I was just a few seconds ago, and bowed to a ghost. And the NPC does return to the English classroom. It does that final check to see if I'm within the 8 virtual feet. That turns out to be true, so that goal is realized, and then it just goes back into a monitoring pattern on the room.